What's up guys, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to the 14th episode of the iOS 10 Jailbreak Update series. And there has been a ton that has gone on since the last episode, which wasn't even a full week ago, but a lot has gone on, a lot of important information, especially within the past 24 hours. And as usual, if you haven't watched the past 2 or 3 videos in this series, make sure to go back and watch those before watching this one, just so you have kind of more context and know what's going on. So in this video, we're mainly going to talk about 3 important things. So the first thing is kind of just to answer last episode's questions about where Luca was last week. He was really quiet last week, and we were kind of questioning and throwing around theories in last episode, but now we actually know the answer as to why he was so quiet last week. We'll also be talking about the Yalu iOS 10.2 jailbreak, which is actually just released today. We're going to be talking about that and how it all came to be and what you need to know about it. And then we're also going to be talking about iOS 10.2 and if you should update or not from 10.1.1 or the iOS 9 untethered jailbreak. We're going to go through a couple different scenarios and talk about if you should update or not. All right, so first of all, let's answer the question that was asked last week. Where was Luca last week? Why was he so quiet? We were throwing around theories as to where he was, what he could have been doing, but now we have a concrete answer. Well, he actually revealed this information on Reddit recently, and he said that he relocated to a new country and is renting his own place for the first time in his life. He also had to set up a company and basically just dealing with real life responsibilities. So this kind of throws out all those bizarre theories that people thought that he was working for Apple so he couldn't release another jailbreak, or something crazy like that I told you guys was not true in the last episode. All right, so now let's talk about the important news. So the iOS 10.2 jailbreak was actually open sourced and released on GitHub yesterday, and Luke was actually working all day and night trying to get it up and working on certain devices and getting it ported to an IPA and out to us to use. And now, of course, on January 26th, we actually have a working iOS 10.2 jailbreak. Now, it is only for select devices, and I will touch on that later in this video, and also a tutorial I have coming after this video. So if you want to know how to jailbreak 10.2, I will have a tutorial coming after this video today. So before we get into that, I just want to talk about this open source project on GitHub. So if we take a look at the files, we can see an Xcode project, a folder for resources, and also a README. And that README states that this is an incomplete iOS 10.2 jailbreak by Luca Tedesco and another security researcher known as Marco Grassi. So those two are the ones who worked together to bring this iOS 10.2 jailbreak to fruition, and now the real fun begins. So it's funny, yesterday a lot of people actually started doing exactly what they did with the 10.1.1 jailbreak when it came out in beta. They were actually trying to find the offsets for the device and get the jailbreak running on their own device. Now these people were a mix of developers and just random people, but of course it was advised for this only to be used by developers. But luckily a lot of users started testing this and posting their offsets in GitHub, and Luca was actually listening to that and adding the offsets into the project. So fast forward past all of yesterday and then into today, Luca actually released the 10.2 jailbreak, the first alpha. It's actually not a beta, it's an alpha. It says beta on his website, but when you download it, it does say alpha. So this of course means that there will be more versions released, as we pretty much knew all along, but this first version only supports the iPhone 6s, 6s Plus, the iPhone SE, and the iPad Pro only. Those are 16K devices, which are the only ones compatible, but 4K devices, which is the iPhone 6 and below, will be possibly compatible later on, either this weekend or next week, because they will be tested out this weekend by Luca himself. So what does all of this actually mean, and should you actually be jailbreaking right now? So first off, this means that we can update to 10.2 with almost 100% certainty. Now don't go running to update your device just yet. I will be running through some scenarios later on in this video telling you whether you should update or not, from one firmware to another. So make sure to stay tuned for that. So the main concern I had for updating from 10.1.1 to 10.2 in previous episodes was just due to Luca's unpredictability. We couldn't really believe 100% that a 10.2 jailbreak was coming. We thought it was, we pretty much assumed it was, but we still didn't know for sure. And 10.1.1 was still be able to be jailbroken. So that's why I advise you guys just to stay on 10.1.1 and save your 10.2 SHSH2 blobs. Well, now that Luca is actually contributing to an open source project, being very active in the community, I'd say it's very safe to update to 10.2 now, even from 10.1.1, as long as you're not on an iPhone 7. Of course, if you're on an iPhone 7, you want to stay on 10.1.1 because this jailbreak will not work on 10.2 for you. So should you jailbreak, and is it stable? So yes, I'd say that you can go ahead and jailbreak as long as you have a 6S, an SE, or an iPad Pro, as those are the only compatible devices right now. But you also need to save your SHSH2 blobs just in case something goes awry and you need to to restore, and you want to stay on 10.2 and you don't have access to City Eraser or anything like that, you'll be able to update or downgrade, using these SSH2 blobs. So make sure to do that. Watch my video if you haven't already. So as for the stability of this jailbreak, Luca actually said that it is more stable than beta 3. And given the fact that Substrate is actually enabled in this jailbreak, meaning that you can actually download Substrate and not have to use some kind of third party, bypass for Substrate, pretty much proves even more to the point that this is a lot stabler than beta 3 of the 10.1.1 jailbreak. Now it is still a beta or an alpha or whatever you want to call it, so it's not going to be completely stable just yet. So you need to be careful and just kind of be smart with what you install inside of Cydia. And just remember, iOS 10.2 is still being signed, so you can actually restore, if you have problems, you can restore to that right now, but obviously in the future you will not be able to. And like I mentioned earlier, I will have a tutorial coming for how to jailbreak iOS 10.2. I will have a tutorial showing you everything you need to do and download, so make sure to stay tuned for that video. So now you may be wondering when the gamma or the final release is actually going to arrive. And to that I say it should not be very long for multiple reasons. So the first thing is that Substrate is enabled by default. This tells you a lot about how Luca feels about this jailbreak. So the second thing is that the icon and the IPA, when you actually download it onto your device, is actually an icon. It actually says Yalu on it. It actually has an image there. It's not just some blank mock portal icon. It's actually a polished icon on your device. So with those two things alone being said, I can't imagine the gamma or the final release is very far away at this point. And just like always, there isn't any kind of ETA or anything like that. We kind of just have to read between the lines and kind of figure it out on our own. And like I've talked about in previous videos, the IPA file will actually support iOS 10 through 10.2. So there's not going to be two separate jailbreaks. There's not going to be two separate IPAs or two separate tools. Everything is going to be combined into just one tool or one IPA file, meaning that when it does get updated, this same IPA file will be able to jailbreak, a 10.1.16s, a 10.26s, or a 10.1.1, iPhone 7, pretty much just everything in one. So now finally, let's talk about what you should be doing to prepare and what version you should be on right now. So if you're on an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 7 Plus and you're on iOS 10.1 or 10.1.1, absolutely stay put. This jailbreak does not work for 10.2 on the iPhone 7, only 10.1 and 10.1.1. With that being said, you do want to save your SSH2 blobs for iOS 10.2. And again, watch my video on my channel. It's up in the cards right now if you haven't already, just in case a jailbreak does arrive for 10.2 sometime in the future. Now, if you're on any other 64-bit device, which is on 10.0.x, definitely go ahead and upgrade to 10.2 right now. And if you're on iOS 10.1.1 on any device except for the iPhone 7 or 7 Plus, it's really up to you. So iOS 10.1.1 and 10.2 will both be able to be jailbroken through this tool. But as I've talked about previously, it is the best practice to update to the latest jailbreakable firmware, which of course would be 10.2. And as of right now, I think it's safe enough to update from 10.1.1 to 10.2, regardless of your device, besides the iPhone 7, of course. Now, if you're on the iOS 9.3.3 jailbreak, I'd say you should go ahead and update, just because a lot of the tweaks will require, iOS 10. A lot of the new tweaks will be made for iOS 10. So I'd definitely go ahead and update to iOS 10 if you are on the 9.3.3 jailbreak. Now, here's the tough one. What if you're on the iOS 9 untethered jailbreak? So this one is completely up to you, but I would personally stay on that untethered jailbreak, just because that could very well be the last untethered jailbreak for iOS, and it's very stable, and it's just a great all-around jailbreak. But of course, if you do decide to stay on that, make sure to save your 10.2 SSH2 blobs, just so you can update, if you change your mind later down the road. And obviously, if you're on iOS 10.2.1, you want to downgrade to 10.2, just because 10.2.1 patches these exploits. And as always, if you guys have any questions about your specific scenario, just leave a comment down below and I will do my best to get back to you. So anyways, guys, that is it for this video. It's supposed to have a lot more substance than this, but since this jailbreak actually got released, that kind of changed the whole game plan with this video. So I had to change a lot of things around, talk about a lot of different things. I had to cut out a lot of theory, and stuff like that. So I wanted to get this out to you guys. Again, I do have a tutorial coming for the 10.2 jailbreak very soon after this video. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to stay tuned for that next video. Make sure to give this video a like if you're actually excited that this 10.2 jailbreak is finally here. We've been waiting a long time for it, and it seems to be finally here. Of course, we still have the gamma and the final to go, but still, it's exciting. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.